407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We here highly resolve that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom.
Fought from 1861 to 1865, the American Civil War was the result of decades of tension between the North and the South, which erupted with Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party taking the presidency in the 1860 presidential election. In the first few months after Lincoln's election, 11 southern states had seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. War finally began when Confederate cannons fired on Fort Sumter, a Union-controlled fort in South Carolina. During the first 2 years, the Confederacy, led by Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, won numerous victories. However, their luck was soon to change. As the Confederate Army advanced northward, General Lee's objective was to induce the Union Army to disperse across a broad front, then draw it to a point far from its base of supply where it could be attacked and beaten. On June 25th, when it became clear that the Confederates were advancing towards the Potomac, General Joseph Hooker advanced and asked Lincoln for more troops. However, upon Lincoln's refusal, Hooker resigned and General Meade stepped into his place. Meade ordered his army to prepare for a defensive battle behind Pipe Creek and sent General John Reynolds, commander of the 1st Corps, to move towards Gettysburg, with the mission of impeding the anticipated movement of the enemy toward Pipe Creek. Because Reynolds did not encounter any infantry force approaching, he marched on to Gettysburg and hurriedly formed his corps into a battle line just west of the town, and soon after, the Battle of Gettysburg began.
The Battle of Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War, with over 50,000 casualties in the span of 3 days. Many historians have called it the high watermark of the Confederacy when General Robert E. Lee hurled the entire strength of his army against the Union forces in an attempt to end the war by destroying his enemy. Lee had invaded the enemy territory of Pennsylvania for the second time. The first invasion culminated in the Battle of Antietam in Sharpsburg, Maryland, the previous year. By invading, Lee put himself in a position to move toward Washington, D.C., and take the capital. If he succeeded, the Confederate States of America would likely win the war and gain the right to declare themselves an independent country. But due to a series of problems, the Confederates were forced to retreat from Gettysburg with terrible losses and never again would move into the Union territory. The battle has long held a great fascination for Civil War historians. Scholars agree that, with heavy casualties and demoralizing defeats suffered by the South, the Battle of Gettysburg was the turning point of the war, a loss from which the Confederacy never fully recovered. It was one of only 2 major battles fought on Union soil. It involved a huge infantry charge, called Pickett's Charge, which ended in horrific losses. It was a major Union victory, which at the time was rare. Most importantly, it was a Union victory, and when such a victory was desperately needed, a Union loss at Gettysburg would have put the capital in jeopardy. Finally, when we consider the many memorable smaller struggles within the Battle of Gettysburg, such as the Little Round Top and Pickett's Charge, it is clear why the Battle of Gettysburg has become the most famous of Civil War battles.
It was to be called the most daring and controversial decision of the Gettysburg campaign. The decision to send thousands of young Southern men into the face of the Union guns upon Cemetery Ridge. It would become known as Pickett's Charge. The attack was conceived as a bold and unexpected effort that would surprise and rout the Union forces. But what the young Confederates faced was a barrage of artillery fire and a wall of lead. As the ragged and bloodied Confederates returned to their own lines in disarray, Lee's subordinates expressed their own views on the ill-fated expedition.
It is my humble opinion that General Lee's actions at Gettysburg were completely justified and brave. He was an incredible man who deserves nothing more than to be placed among the top men in history. It is a great loss to history and to posterity that General Lee did not write his own recollections as General Grant did. If his plan of battle was faulty, then for this he is responsible. But if his general plan promised success, and if there was a lack of cooperation in his execution, or if there were delays, then responsibility is shifted to other shoulders. When the opportune moment to strike arrives, the blow must fall, for the next instant it may be futile. Not only moments, but hours of delay occurred. I am criticizing officers for the lack of complete cooperation, for unavoidable delays. Had all the commands cooperated by a simultaneous assault, it requires no partiality to see that this great commander's object would have been surely achieved.
I have to say, I'm a pretty big fan of Robert E. Lee. Big fan. He was a great man who did some pretty darn great things. However, he didn't do so many smart things when we were at Gettysburg. To tell the truth, he acted downright stupid. To start with, no assurances were made from officers of the First Corps, but rather objections. General Lee did not even give me a guide to lead the way to the field from which battle was to be opened. He certainly failed to go and look at it, and assist in selecting the ground and preparing it for action. Some claim that his only fault as a general was his tender, generous heart. But a heart in the right place looks more to the cause entrusted to its care than for hidden ways by which to shift its responsibility to the shoulders of those whose lives hang upon his word. We were left to our own resources in finding ground upon which to organize for battle. The enemy had changed position somewhat after the march was ordered, but as we were not informed of his position before the march, we could not know of the change. The Confederate commander did not care to ride near us, to give us information of a change, to assist in preparing for attack, nor to inquire if new and better combinations might be made. It does not look like generalship to lose a battle and a cause, and then lay the responsibility upon others.